Hi, this is Brett Ingram, entrepreneur and award-winning product creator, and today I want to answer the question, is it better for entrepreneurs to do the work themselves or to pay somebody else to do it? Wouldn't it be nice to just be able to pay people to do every single thing that we need done as entrepreneurs? I mean, it's a sweet fantasy for sure, especially when we're feeling overwhelmed and we have too much to do and there's just too little time and too many demands on all of our time. The challenge, of course, is if we're paying someone to do it, then obviously we need the funding. We need the money required to be able to make that happen. So if we're solopreneurs or if we're just getting started, that's the dilemma. We have too much to do and we don't have enough time and we aren't making enough to spend it or invest it in getting help. So what do? You know, when I was starting out, I was, working full time and I was doing this business thing sort of part time to get it started. Thankfully in digital marketing, at least, you can do that. You're not restricted to needing to do it full time. You don't need a ton of funding. So I had the benefit of being able to do it part time, spend only, essentially what I can afford basically, and do it in a way that it might take me more time, but I could get to where I needed to be, and whatever time it took, it took. Once you're on the clock and you have a lot of expenses with your business, you don't have that luxury. You've got to be able to get things going. You've got to be able to make it work. But nonetheless, I was super busy because I had a very active life. I mean, I was working full time, so that was a lot. I had, a small child at home, so that was a lot. Already obviously, married and had the house and the mortgage and the car payments and stuff like that. But I also was going to graduate school at night. So I was going to graduate school at night, and it was a challenge because it was a couple nights a week and all day on Saturday. So you can imagine I didn't have a lot of free time to be able to work on business. And so, once I got it started and once I started to see some progress, it became, very obvious to me that if I just had more time, I could have done a lot more. Or if I had the money to be able to pay somebody to do more, I could have scaled it and grew it faster. Unfortunately, I didn't have either one. I certainly didn't have extra time. I was already staying up super late at night, not sleeping enough, getting up early, going into the office early. I was stealing an hour here, an hour there, whatever I could do to make it work. And at the same time, obviously I was pretty strapped. So, I didn't have money to be able to say, well, I'm just going to go hire an admin and have them do these 12 things that I need. So I had to do it all myself, and as time started to evolve and as I got to a point where I switched and I started to go full time, I still found that ironically, the amount of work that I needed to do just mushroomed. Sure, the revenue started to go up as well, but the work that I had to do to get to where I wanted to be to build the business also started to really increase. So I still had the same sort of conundrum. Now I was doing it full time, but I still had a tremendous amount of work. I was working probably 60 to 80 hours a week at the time. I wasn't making a ton of money, but I was doing enough at least to survive. And so again, I was sort of stuck. I was in a situation where I was working too much. I didn't have, the ability to get enough done in a day I needed to get done or enough done in a week. But at the same time, I didn't really have the money to be able to go out and pay other people to do the stuff either. I love the idea of where you pay somebody and it scales but that's a risky proposition if you have to pay it up front, which is oftentimes the way that it works. It's sort of the cart and the horse issue, is that if you had more money, you could spend it to generate more and grow, but you don't have that money, so you can't do it, so you can't get there. And I completely understand that frustration and that sort of endless cycle of how do I do this, what do I do next, and everything else, the stress that comes along with it and the pressure and the difficulty of making the right decisions. And so even though I was on my feet and running with it full time, I still found myself in the same situation. And it wasn't easy. So eventually I got to a point where I said, okay, I can't grow past this until I get to a place where I have more help and I have more stuff done. I realized that I was tapped. I was working all that I could possibly work. There's no way I could put in more hours. So the paradigm I was stuck in terms of the amount of money I was making, I had sort of tapped out on that. I wasn't going to be able to do more. I was at the top. So I'm like, okay, the only way to grow it beyond this point is to buckle down, pay somebody to do some stuff, and start to generate more because of it. And I understand short term, that may be a situation where I actually eat money, but long term, it should make me more, right? So that was the idea. So as I've detailed in other podcast episodes, my initial attempts at hiring and outsourcing were a disaster. I ended up spending more and making less, and it didn't really work. Once I got to a point where I understood how to do it, and I started to outsource, then what I did was I was able to outsource effectively, but now I had a different decision to make because it came down to how much of it do I outsource, how much of it do I spend versus how much of it do I do myself. And that's sort of where I want to share what I've learned and how I understand how it all works now to help you, so no matter what phase you're at, you have the right decision-making process to be able to understand, do I go get some help? Do I do all this myself? What are the rules for this? Because it can be very difficult, confusing to understand, and hard to make those decisions about what to do and when. So look, at the end of the day, there is no hard rule. There is no, well, if X, then Y. It doesn't exactly work that way. But there are some really valuable guidelines to follow that in order to make these decisions. And they're the guidelines that I sort of developed and followed based on my own trial and error. I hired some people and then I realized I didn't really need to hire for that. Or, I didn't hire and I tried to do something myself, and then I found that it took me way more time than it should have, and it was time that was taken away from other things. So the first thing that you want to ask about whatever thing you're considering hiring for or outsourcing for is, how important is that to your business growth? Okay, I'll give you an example of this. So one of the things that really nags me is when I have an email box that's overflowing with messages. The vast majority of it is junk. I know that. Occasionally I get something that's important or something that I need to process, something I need to look at, something I need to consider. And so initially it was more of a psychological burden. I didn't like the idea that I had all these emails stacking up and I could just never get to it. So what would end up happening is it would get to a point where it was so overrun, I would just go in and delete the whole box and then say, now I'm going to stay up on it. And it never happens. I'm never able to stay up on it. So I outsourced that in addition to a few other things. And what I found was it ultimately wasn't really that important. There wasn't really anything coming in that mattered that much that I couldn't find in other places. And so while it was something valuable and it gave me a little bit of peace of mind to know someone was doing it, it just wasn't really that important. It wasn't going to affect my business growth. So that was something to me that I could deprioritize and say, you know what, if I can get somebody to do this and I can get it, whatever, then fine, but it isn't something that's important to me. Now, on the other hand, I'll give you an example from right now, actually. So right now, one of the things I'm doing is building my podcast. Well, one of the things that's super important to that is doing the marketing for it. It's doing the search engine optimization. It's doing all the other things that you need to grow it. To create content and create episodes is great, but it isn't field of dreams, right? It's not like if you build it, they'll come. I mean, you might slowly get some traction, but you need to get your message out in front of people for it to really have an opportunity to germinate, to grow, to spread, and for people to get excited about it. And so that is something that I knew nothing about. I'm not an SEO guy. I'm not a content marketing guy. I don't know those fields at all. And I know that I can hire someone who's an expert, who has a track record, who's done this for, one podcast after another, and I could pay him a certain amount that makes sense for me to be able to do that. And so that is super vital to my business growth. So that's something that is valuable for me to be able to spend on. So that's the first thing that you want to look at is, within the context of your business, even though it nags you, even though it might be something you'd love to get rid of or offload, if it's not vital to your actual business growth, if it isn't going to raise revenue, generate revenue, or cut expenses, trim expenses, it's probably not that important, and it's probably not something that you want to prioritize. The second thing that I look at is how much time does it take, for me to do it. So, one of the things that I have to do is I have to monitor, all the merchant accounts, right? Because when you're selling anything online, one of the things that happens is you will get, invariably, you'll get, questions, people that reach out to the merchant, they couldn't reach your support, or they, their email bounced or whatever it is. So they'll reach out to the platform itself and, file an issue that then needs to be, well, the thing of it is, that's something that honestly, I would love, I could just have somebody outsource and do that for me, but it's so little time and it's so infrequent that it actually just, it's not really worth it. I'm not going to pay somebody unless I add it on to something else that they're doing to do that for me, because it just doesn't make that much sense. It is important. Got to take care of customers, got to make sure customer issues are addressed. At the same time, it's not something that is often enough or overwhelming enough or time consuming enough that I would go out of my way to outsource it. I might add it on to something else somebody's already doing, but that's about it. And the other sidebar to that question is it a repeat or a one time? So, customer support in general, for example, is something that is going to be a repeat task. Posting your content is going to be a repeat task. It's going to be ongoing. It's going to be over and over and over. And so for those things, if they're repeat, it's the time it takes you isn't so much what it takes you in one day, but it's what it takes you every day. And when you add that up over the course of the week or the course of the month, how much did that cost you in time? And so you take a look at how much time does it actually take. And again, what we're trying to do is get a composite view of all the stuff in our business, rank it based on priority, and rank it based on other factors to understand what makes the most sense. So whether or not, it takes a lot of time and whether or not it's repeat or just a one-shot deal makes a big difference. One-shot deal in general, if it's not time-consuming, much easier just to do it. We get it done, it's done. It would take more time to hire somebody and explain it to them than it would to just get it done. If it's something that's going to be ongoing over and over and over and it's repetitive, a lot of times those things are very good for outsourcing, because once you teach them how to do it, they can take it and run with it. And so it won't become a cost center. The next thing is, how much does it actually cost to outsource? Okay, so if you are outsourcing administrative tasks, you might be able to do that for, $5, $7, $8, $10, $12 an hour, something like that, depending on where you're hiring, where you're outsourcing. If you need a programmer for some enterprise level language, like I used for a couple of the apps, you're talking, $50 an hour. So it's a completely different ballgame. A 40-hour week for $50 an hour, you're looking at $2,000 a week. 40-hour week at $5 an hour, it's $200 a week. So it's a completely different structure there. So how much does it actually cost to outsource just in real world dollars? We're not comparing anything yet. We're just trying to get a general idea. Graphic design is going to be more expensive than administrative tasks, right? Programming is going to be more expensive in general than graphic design. And so depending on what it is, it's going to be a different amount. And then when we also rank that based on its importance to growing our business, we start to, the picture starts to come into a little bit more focus. There's a couple more things we're going to go through, and that will help us really make those determinations. So how much does it actually cost to outsource? And again, this is where it comes back to one time versus repeat. Is this something where you got to pay this person every day, every week, every month? Or this is one project, when they're done, I write the check for that amount and it's done. That's another really important factor. Another thing we want to ask is, how good are we at it, right? Or what would it take for us to get good at it? So if I go back to the podcast marketing example, I'm not good at all at marketing a podcast. I don't know anything about it really, other than what I've read and learned. So what would it take for me to get good at it? I could probably do it, but it would take me hours and hours a day of figuring stuff out and then doing the work. And it would probably take me months to optimize that, figure it all out and everything else. So, I'm not good at it, and it would take me a while to get good at it. Now, if, same thing would in terms of like programming or some kind of skill like that. If you aren't a programmer and you need programming, well, you're not good at it, and it's going to take a long time to learn that. Graphic design is something that when I look at, I'm not good at it, but I do know how to do it. And so, that falls into a little bit more of a gray area. Depends on the value of what quality I need in terms of the design. If it needs to be super professional, I won't do it. I'm not a pro. If it needs to be something simple that I can crank out, then I'll do it because I can do that. And so what would it take to get good at it, or how good are we at it in the first place? Because if the outsourcer would be able to do it a lot better than we would, then that's a great argument for outsourcing it. If we could do it just as good or better, there are some things I've outsourced and then I said, you know what? I could have done that 10 times better myself. Then it might be better to keep that. Another question is, how would our results compare to the freelancer? So it isn't just how good are we at it, but how good would a freelancer be at it? Now, I've hired graphic designers, and some of them are very functional. And what I mean by that is they meet the letter of whatever your requirement is, but there's no artistry in their work. There's no understanding of color palettes and visual aesthetics. So you get designs back that they meet the requirements, but they don't look good. They aren't designs that are going to compel anyone to buy or click or opt in or engage. And then I've worked with other designers. I work with one right now who she just understands spacing and colors and fonts, and she gets how to construct a design that looks really, really visually appealing. And because that's part art and not just function, that's something that sometimes you need to be able to look at. I'm a 0 on the artistic scale of graphic design, but I'm high ranking on the functional aspect. So I can make designs, but my designs aren't artistic. So when I need something that's really good, my results are going to compare not very well. If I need something that's functional, my results will compare well. You need to ask yourself how your results would compare if you were to get a freelancer to do it. And then the last thing, and this is sort of, funny or whatever you want to call it, but how much do we like it? How much do we like doing it? I mean, plain and simple fact is, right? It's cool to do stuff that we like to do. So maybe, it's not our wheelhouse, but it doesn't take a ton of time and we really like doing it. If I really like to post social media, okay, well, I could pay somebody to do it, but I really enjoy the process of it. So I want to go do that myself, and it's not too time consuming that it's pulling me away from other stuff, right? If, on the other hand, I really don't like doing this particular thing. I don't like scraping through an email box and deleting out all old messages. I can't stand doing that. So that is something I would much rather have somebody else do. And so that is something that, I could bundle with something else, but I'd want to give that away. And so if we ask all of those questions, what happens is it starts to give us an understanding, and it focuses in the picture a little bit about what things on our plate are things that are, high probability or, good to potentially outsource, and what things we really want to hang on to and make sure that we keep doing ourselves because they're important, or we like them, or they're not very time consuming, so why not? So the takeaway here is, as entrepreneurs, especially when we're starting out with little to no funding, we have to make really hard decisions to prioritize what needs to be done and the best way to do it. By looking at the importance, by looking at the benefits and the costs of every single thing that we do, we can decide which tactics, which tasks are better to outsource and which ones are better to do ourselves. The goal here is to keep optimizing our workflow to get more efficient, more profitable, and spend the most time on doing the things that we love.